She is a media powerhouse here in Canada. Believe me, this woman, powerhouse does not define her. She is the real deal. And you know, people who, of course, will make a lot of impact, but they don't make so much noise. But the work makes the noise, right? She's one of those people. The work just makes the noise. You got to meet her when she's in action to know, you know, the length and breadth of her network and the kind of work that she does through FKB Media Solutions. And she's been able to manage a lot of events here in Canada, Black History Month event, pull up people, you know, just put them on the front burner out here. And that's the work people do in the PR sector. Like, you don't get to know the people who do the work, right? But then they just see the result of the work. So well done on everything. And I'm truly, truly happy to, you know, to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here. Yes, I've always been a sort of behind the scenes person. My background was in television news, and I was a producer and writer for those 20 plus years. I started working when I was 5. And so
amazing. Amazing. I mean, when I saw former news producer, I'm like, this is what they call someone paying abuse. The writer, I mean, I was at an event, you know, the other day, and I saw her in action. And listen, there's something about PR and the job when somebody's at the forefront of making sure they deliver the job properly. So it's not just working behind the scene, it's making sure that everything goes well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just, yeah. So, I mean, well done on everything. And how was your week?
Well, my week wasn't the greatest. I was sick all week. I'm still a little congested. So I had a really bad head cold. And then my back kind of gave out. So I've been sort of working flat on my back for the week. But I'm on the way to recovery. So I'm feeling a little better today. Thanks.
Amazing. Do you have a self-care routine, if you don't mind me asking?
I do. You know, I was doing self-care Sundays for a bit. And kind of stopped, but what I would do was, and I didn't stop for any particular reason, just life is just the reason, but I would, you know, give myself a pedicure, like I'd soak my feet in Epsom salts, and then give myself a very nice pedicure. I do a little facial thing happening, so a mask, and do that. I would just sit back, and I would either, like, you know, watch something that's just like mind-numbing, like, you know, silly, that's on Netflix or something like that, and just you know, zone out or watch something, or I read. I love to read. I was in a book club. Again, life got busy. But if I get a chance to just read something enjoyable, not something work related, I try and do that from time to time.
Amazing. Do you meditate?
I do meditate. Okay. I do meditate. I definitely meditate around the new moon, which is coming up soon. And yes, and I give my, you know, thanks to the universe for all of my blessings, and then I request certain things, and they come to me, and all that sort of stuff. So yes, I do.
Yes, and I love that you mentioned the new moon, because the energy has been. I mean, for those who know how it is before the new moon, pre and post, the energy. You know, sometimes you're weak, you're not there, you're not quite there, but then you just know this. You're giving room for changes to come. Something new is coming in. So I love the part you said, you know, you're just open to whatever is coming in. So let's hope it's going to be good vibes and good stuff.
Good vibes. Always only good vibes. And if you meditate around the new moon, and like you actually go out, not just in your house, but, you know, go out by the water, you will feel that energy. Like, you will actually feel it coming into you. So I highly recommend it. It's an experience.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. I'm going to add that to my bucket list of things to do during the new moon. Yes, so let's just get right into the show. Thank you so much for, you know, sharing a bit about your week. And my first question to you, which is very interesting, I always like to know that, your journey into the media sector in Canada. Please kindly do us the honors of sharing it with us today.
Well, I started, I would say, okay, so let's go way back. When I was in high school, going into university, I was trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do. I was always very interested in writing as a creative writer, and I was kind of thinking about doing that. I at one point wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a lawyer. I got a bursary, law bursary, so I thought I was going to do that. So I did apply to journalism school. I applied to go to Carleton, and I got into Carleton. I got into U of T, and I got into York on a scholarship. But I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to do journalism, and I didn't even really know what that entailed. And so I decided I wanted to just do my undergrad, and then I would decide from there. So I decided to go to U of T, and I did my my Bachelor of Arts, I majored in English. And while I was there, I wrote for the paper. I went to the Scarborough campus, so I wrote for the Underground, but I also wrote for the Varsity downtown. And so I knew I still wanted to do that. And then they had a radio station, so I worked on the radio station at Scarborough campus, and I became the program director, and I had my own show. And so it was there. I was bitten, right? I wanted to do something, wasn't sure what, was exploring different things. And when I finished university, I decided I was going to do into a graduate program in journalism. And so I applied to Ryerson's program because it's the best in the country. And so I applied. They have like over 700 people apply. Only 60 people get picked. I was one of the people that get picked. And so it's, it's a process. You have to write an essay, you have to do an interview, you have to do a current affairs task, and plus your marks, plus you have to show that you have like you've done your portfolio of your work, all of those things. So it's not just like, oh, they picked me. Like there was a whole process, right? And so I got into that program. It was a 2-year program, and it had the missing component that I didn't get at U of T, which was television. And once I experienced television there, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So in the first year, you do everything, and then in the second year, you narrow down your focus. And so I did all of the television stuff in my second year, which was like documentary, and we had our own like news show, and you learn everything: camera, editing, writing, etc. So I got my degree in journalism, and I finished. And in that time, I was volunteering at different news organizations. I was volunteering at City, and I did an internship at CTV, but I still didn't. And at that point, I like everybody in journalism school, I just thought I was going to be a reporter because that's what you do, right? Everybody wants to be on TV, right? So I had a demo tape, I sent it out to everybody, and I got rejected by everybody, right? And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do in the meantime? And I guess there was always this entrepreneurial thing in me, and so I started my own business, and I did public relations for community groups. And so I did stuff for the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario, and I did stuff for Tropicana. And so I was still trying to like use, because I did do a PR course in my journalism program, so I was trying to use the skills that I had, that I had amassed with organizations that, needed the help, and that would definitely take it at a reduced or free cost, right? So I was doing that. I was also, like, at that time, too, like, I would be at City TV. One of my mentors was Jojo Chinto. I don't know if you remember him. He was a reporter there, crime reporter. So he had come to my class and spoken and invited people to give feedback on his series. I was the only one who did, and he invited me down to the station to shadow him, and then that was just the start of a great relationship and my foot in the door. So.
Amazing.
Yeah, so a year after I was volunteering there, and I would like write, I was trying to learn how to write for news, and I would, write stuff, but it wouldn't go to air, obviously, but I would write stuff so I could figure out their style and all that sort of stuff. So then a position came open for breakfast television for a writing position. It was a part-time position, so it was like starting at 4 a.m., ended at 9 a.m. That was the shift. And so I was encouraged to apply for it. And at that time, I was the senior editor for Pride newspaper. So I was working at Pride newspaper at the time as well. So I applied for it. So I go to work, and I got the job. So I go to work. I get up at 3 a.m. I would go to work for 4 a.m. and work and write for breakfast television. Kevin Frankish was the anchor at that time until 9 a.m. And then I would drive back up to Scarborough and work at Pride until about 3 in the afternoon. From 9 to 3, and then I go home and sleep, and I do it all again. So that was sort of how I got into journalism. And then from there, very quickly, I think maybe in 4 or 5 months, they offered me a full-time position writing for the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock news, and I was there for quite some time. I was there for about 6 or 7 years, and I became a producer by the time I had some kids, so I went on mat leave, and came back and I was the producer for the New News, the 6, the 11, the Weekend, whichever show. And then I also helped to launch CP24. So we launched CP24, and I was a producer on that station as well, producing their news cycle. And then I took some time off to be with my kids and came back and launched another station, Toronto One. And I was a producer there for a few years before that station changed to Sun TV. And then I left there, went back to City for 5 years. And then I went to CTV, and I became the news producer for Canada AM for 7 years. And then that show was taken off the air, and Your Morning was launched. So I helped launch Your Morning, and I was the control room producer for that show. And then I was the producer for CTV News Channel for their morning show for about 2 or 3 years before I left and launched my own business. So that's my journalism career in a
Oh my gosh. That's you just read a whole Wikipedia profile in the most classy way. Thank you so much for just taking us through. I mean, I was following you visually in my head, and that's the thing with media people. Somebody's talking, and then you have that visual mind, and that's what I mean. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask, did you experience any bump on the road? Because it seems to me like you transitioned from one place to the other.
Oh.
And when you experienced bumps on the road, how did you overcome it? The challenges as a Black woman. As a Black woman, yes.
Well, that's the only woman I can be. Yeah, of course I experienced bumps on the road. There was times where, obviously, because of who we are, I experienced racism, I experienced sexism. But I come from a very strong foundation at home. I have a very great sense of who I am. My parents instilled that in me, and even when we were in grade school, elementary school, there was a program that the board was launching, and it was for students who were Black to come in on Saturdays and learn about their heritage. And we were part of the sort of test case kids that were, part of, that went to that program. And so I've always known about my history and know who I am. And, I don't, I walk into a room with confidence, right? And with the ancestors on my shoulders. So those things don't really faze me, but definitely there was times when I felt like, I was overlooked for positions, and it was given to my white counterpart who had lesser skills or abilities, or I was actually helping that person, right? And then when they got the job, I was still helping that person, right? And so those things happen. But I had a friend one time when that happened to me. He was working with me at City, and I was feeling really down about sort of things, and he took me aside and he said, do you believe in God? And I said, yes, of course, yes, I do believe in God. And he said, then you have nothing to worry about. He will look out for you. Everything will always happen the way it's supposed to happen. And, sometimes people have to remind you of your faith, right? And especially in those times when you're just wondering. And, he was right in the end, right? And so, things worked out eventually for me in certain aspects. And even in hindsight, certain things that maybe I thought I wanted was not necessarily for me, right? And it would not have necessarily been a good thing for me, right? So even though I might have thought at the time, oh, this is something or this is a position that I want, right? He knew better, right? And so, I had to trust in that, when certain things didn't go my way. Mm-hmm. But, faith definitely helped me through those things. A strong sense of being helped me through those things. I was twice in my career, I was laid off. And the first time was devastating. The second time, not so much, right? But the first time definitely was devastating, because you go through a whole process of looking at who else kept their job, and you're thinking, well, I'm, more qualified than that person, right? But at the end of the day, you can't take any of that stuff personal. It's really a numbers game. It's really about cutting costs, right? And so almost in a way you should be flattered because clearly you're making a lot of money, right? And that's why they got rid of you, right? So the people that were left behind are not making a lot of money, and that's why they were capped, right? And they had to sort of keep it. And I've known people who've been left in those situations, and it's actually more stressful because your staff is cut, you're asked to do more, you're not getting paid, as much or whatever. So again, you're thinking, this is a horrible situation for me, but actually you're in a better position than those that were left behind in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about perspective.
Amazing. That's powerful. And I love what you said about knowing what is for you and what doesn't work for you. And, that's a very good place to be. So 20 years in the media, 20 years of contributing to the media sector here in Canada. From the time you came into the sector, right, to now, what has changed? What are some of the changes that you see now that you are proud of? Like, oh my God, I wish this was in my time when I came into the media. Because definitely there's a lot of changes have happened in the world. So what are some of those changes that, you see right now and you're really proud of?
Well, definitely things like this. People have more control over media, right? And their messaging. Right? So we put 20 years question. Actually, it's more than 20 years, but let's just leave it at 20 years. I don't want to age myself. So yeah, I mean, definitely like being able to control your message, control your brand, having your own platform, you have your platform on YouTube. I have a platform on YouTube. Being able to do those things, I think is a good thing. I tell some of the students that I mentor and that work for me that, if I was coming up in their time, I would be killing the game because it's like you can come in with a whole portfolio of stuff that you've done. You can go and make your own stories. People are using their phones to shoot, to edit, all of those things that when I was coming up, you had a big camera on your shoulder and you had to, rent like editing space or whatever, book editing space to do cut stuff or whatever. So it was a bigger process. And I think that, definitely news outlets, and I know when I was working in news, they really didn't take social media seriously and they got kind of left behind because they didn't take it seriously at the time. The impact that it would have and sort of like that people would be turning to that for information or gathering information even using social media. And so I think that definitely I wish that when I was coming up it was available to me and but I think that it's been a good and a bad thing because there's some things about social media that aren't great, right? Like I do have concerns when people are shooting something, when somebody is some sort of, criminal activity is happening or people are fighting or whatever, instead of breaking up that fight or stopping something from happening, that the first thing you're thinking about is, taking out your camera. But it's good in a sense because it's documenting these things because there's a lot of things that if we didn't have on camera, that people wouldn't believe was happening.
Yeah, that's it. The good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that because sometimes when those things are not documented, there is no evidence.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you want to say, why didn't you do this? Why did you bring out your camera? But then on the other hand, you're like, okay, if this person didn't record this incident, we won't know it happened at all. So, but of course, I respect your reservation, in that regard. And, being, a media powerhouse, how do you curate content to meet your target audience? It's a thing with PR. It's a constant battle to say, okay, what sort of content should I put out there? Just a little bit of subtle masterclass on, the process. Yeah.
Yeah. So I give you a sort of something I walked through with someone yesterday who called me, and she had an event that she wanted to get on CP24. And so one of the things that I told her was that, okay, you got to think about, first of all, what makes your event stand out from everybody else who's having a similar event. So let's just say this was it was like a investment talk, right? So what makes your investment talk stand out from Joe Blow, who's having his investment talk? So why would CP24 put that on versus yours, right? So that's the first thing you've got to look at. What is the news hook right? What is in the news cycle? So I said to her, like, one of the things that is big right now that everybody is concerned about is affordability, right? Like, how are we buying groceries? How are we putting gas in our car? How are we living? Because inflation is high, people can't afford to, to do anything, right? So that's top of mind right now. So how can you angle your event to fit into what people are concerned about right now and is of interest in the news, right? The other thing is, generally speaking, for something like that, maybe you need to get somebody, a notable name that's attached to it. So somebody, I don't know, when I think finance, I think somebody like the wealthy barber, right? Or Dave Chilton, right? Somebody who has some sort of cachet behind them or some sort of name behind them. That also brings some sort of interest from the media to publicize your event. And then lastly, I say, if you're doing something for profit, like you're selling tickets, right? They're looking at it as, well, then you need to buy advertising, right? So maybe try to have a charitable component to your event, whether it's that part of the proceeds are going to, help young people, get into a financial mentoring group or support, something like that, right? So that there's some sort of something noble connected to it, and it's not just about making a profit. Because if your event is about just making a profit, then they'll like, well, just buy advertising. Like, we're not just give you time to push tickets to for you to make money, right? So we are in a capitalist society. So, I mean, those are the sort of things that you want to think about when you're putting together what I call as a media pitch to try and get publicity for your event. You want it to be very organic. You want it to be something of interest across the board or specific. Like if it's something like, say it's an investment thing for young Black people, like last month would have been a great month to pitch that because they were looking for stories linked to Black History Month, etc. This month is about International Women's Day and Women's Month. So maybe it's about helping women get their finances right, helping single women, purchase their first home, right? Something like that, that is something linked to what people are talking about this month and would be of interest to a general audience.
Amazing. That's powerful. You dropped a bombshell masterclass. And that's the work of a pro. You don't need to talk too much. Like my head is, was just going, okay, yes, I get it. And I saw that in action, last Saturday, last week when I, attended the event. And I mean, I'm like, oh my God, how is she able to do that? Like,
Yeah, so that was the Black Diamond Ball that you're talking about. Yes.
Yes. Black Diamond Ball.
Yeah. There was a lot of moving parts of that because people know that think it's just a ball, but that's like a month-long thing. And so they had business. They had a connection with RBC's Experience Space in Sherway Gardens. So every week they had, like, one week they had a small business and mortgages, and then they had artist development, and then they had a mental health session. And they also showcased artists, right? So there was a lot of different things happening for the community. So there was, coverage for that. And then also the ball itself, which obviously had headliner Shantae Moore, was showcasing Canadian talent, had the Black Marketplace, and of course, like over 1,000, like, Black people in one beautiful hotel.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it was, it was a beautiful event, and I've got to say, well done to you once again. And of course, I want to ask you, looking at the Canadian, entertainment and media industry right now, what do you think is the future? Because, I mean, for me as an immigrant coming from a background of Nigerian entertainment, there are different ways we do things here, and that's one of the reasons why I'm learning on the job here to see how things are done. Right. So I've seen that there's a lot of media buzz here, but we're not really being talked about at the front burner in the world news, if you get what I'm saying. Like, some things happen here, CNN is not capping on it, they're not talking about it. And in my mind, I'm like, listen, this is a big country. Number one, quality of life all over the world. So As a PR person, right, what is the future of the entertainment industry? What are some things that you think, could change just to change the narrative a little bit? Because look at the Black Diamond Ball Toronto, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling somebody, I said, if this happened in the US with the money and everything and the good planning, it's going to be all over the news. And that's not because the job was not done. It is because, we're quite silent here with media in Canada, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you do the amazing job and all that. So I just want to know, your thoughts around that.
Okay, I feel like there's two things in there that you're asking me. So because you're asking me about like the news coverage in
Yeah, the
general and about
news coverage in general, the future of the media, how can we improve it to make sure that, events and things that happen here, the good events, of course,
mm-hmm.
People, Black women, Black men get
Mm-hmm.
seen by,
Mm-hmm.
the media on the front burner, not just Canadian media, if you get what I'm saying. Right. So what can we do, as a PR pro, what do you think should be done to change that narrative?
I don't know that there's anything that can be done. Like I can tell you, okay, maybe some things that can be done that I think definitely that there has to be more people like me, right, that are pitching these stories. There are very few Black PR people in Canada, right? Much less in Toronto, right? There's a handful of people that I know, right? And we also don't only just pitch Black stories. I have other clients, right, that are not Black, but the majority of the stuff that I pitch are Black focused, because I do think that is missing, right? And so, but I also think that it has to be presented properly, and that's part of the problem. That's part of the learning, right? That's part of the stuff I offer, on my website and when I do workshops, right, to help our communities so that you can get your stories in the news, right? It's also about how we're presenting them, pitching them, and being prepared, right? So very quickly, for example, right, if I'm pitching, let's go back to the investment event, right? And she has done other events before. So if I'm pitching this, and if you think about when you watch a story on the news, right, and they're saying, okay, they have this event or whatever, she's done something in the past, we want to see like the success of the event that she did in the past, right? So that's something called B-roll. So you need to have that for them to show, right, that, she's had a sold-out event in the past and there's people there and what happens at these events. Because if you, television is very visual. So if you don't have visuals, it's very hard for them to do the story, right? They don't just want to have talking heads. They want to have pretty pictures or graphics or something that goes along with your story. So a lot of that has to do with media preparation and being, when you're pitching a story, to have those things prepared. Now, I do think that's part of it. I do think that people, having people from different ethnicities, not just Black, within a newsroom, right, to also pitch those stories, because that's what I did as a producer, right, as also present those stories that they would like to see, whatever. It makes a difference. If you have all white people in the boardroom, they're not thinking about those stories. They're not pitching those stories, right? So you need to have that visibility within news organizations as well, right? So that will make a difference. Now, I think that part of the thing too, and you asked me how I think news has changed over the years, is there's been a lot of what's called convergence, which is like telecommunications companies buying media outlets, right? Bell, Rogers, etc., right? So they're not necessarily interested in journalism. They're interested in content for their cell phones and for their, internet service, etc. So that's where sort of there's a disconnect in terms of the interest in telling stories and journalism and that sort of thing. There's been like a sort of push and pull with that, and where there's been all these cuts and layoffs within the industry. So if you don't have a lot of people, some people will say, oh, there's always, you just see the same stories. Sometimes you just see the same stories because there's nobody to do the new stories, right? You're running on a skeleton staff. And so that's sort of the downside of what I see in the future for news organizations, is that it's not that there's a lot that they don't want to do these stories. They don't have the people to do the stories.
Amazing. That's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You've just nailed it. You know, the manpower is what we're looking at here. If we can get that right, then perhaps the stories will be told, you know, where they should be told, beyond the borders of Canada. Right. So thank you so much, you know, for sharing that. Now, as a newbie, you know, here in, you know, in Canada, myself, of course,
How long have you
and, you know,
how long have you been in Canada?
I've been here for a bit.
Mm-hmm. But you call yourself
I've
a
been here for,
newbie still.
well, in newbie in the media.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. He'll be in the media. You know, like they always say, you've got to use like say 20 years in a space or 10 years, like some say. But then, I mean, compared to the years of experience that you have, if you get what I'm saying, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still a newbie learning on the rope.
Okay.
And I love to learn from people. I love to learn from people out there before me. I love to see what they've done. And I have a community of, you know, women from Nigeria, from other parts of Africa who are my friends in a particular network in the media, and everybody's trying to put their foot in the door. So how does this work? How do we navigate this? You know, how do people get out there? So what would you say to young women like myself who are trying, right, to get into that space in the media, do the work, put this news out there, put women. I mean, for the work I do, for example, I love to profile women. That's my own strength. I want to spotlight women, right? I want to see women thrive. I want to see Black women on the front burner. I want people to talk about them. I want the news to be out there, not just in our communities alone, but to be seen by the world via our platforms. So what advice would you give, right, you know, to a woman like myself and other young women who would watch this on my YouTube channel, who want to go into the media space? What advice would you give to us?
Well, I would. So when you say into the media space, you mean like mainstream media, right?
Like mainstream media,
Yeah.
yes.
So what I find that we tend to do is to stay in our circle, to stay within where we're comfortable. And I always tell people, like, change doesn't come unless you're uncomfortable, right? Things remain the same when you just stay in one spot, right? And so I think that one of the things that I suggest to people is to move outside of that comfort zone and that circle. So I attend a lot of different things. I like a lot of different events, right? When I say things, events and stuff that I don't see a lot of our community at, right? And it's not that they can't be. I'm there, so it's not that they can't be there, right? But I know that one of the things that people don't tend to do is invest in themselves. So we will say, for example, I don't want to be trite about it, right? But you know, so we will invest in our nails. I don't, right? But we'll invest in our nails and go and get, you know, how much is a manicure? Like $50 or something like that, right? But if I said to you, there is an event on Friday with Women in Film and Television. It's a networking event for $50. Come out, $50. I'm not paying. What am I getting for $50? I'm not paying $50 to go to that. Right? Esther, you know that's the response, right?
I'm laughing because this happened on a group yesterday that I'm on, and the admin went off on the person. This event was $75, and she started highlighting the benefits of this event. So at a point, she went off, like, wait, why am I explaining to you? Like, you should see the value of what I'm giving. Like, okay, but then if they tell you to come out for drinks, you've got $75 to pay. But now I'm sharing this information with you, and you're saying it's too expensive. So what's the deal? So we had to tell her, like, you know what, just take it easy. Speak to those of us who want to attend the event. Leave the other because they came for us. So that's why I laughed when you said, I'm like, okay.
Right.
So please go on.
Yes. So that's the kind of mentality thinking that we have to get out of, right? In that, you know, I'm not saying you can't get your nails done, right? But I'm saying that you have to look at certain things as an investment in you, right? And attending something or being a part of something. There are so many things that I've gone to that really actually sometimes doesn't have anything to do with media, but I've gone and I've met people who have been so instrumental in helping me in other areas of what I'm doing, or they've connected me with someone else, right? You're as strong as your network. So I always encourage people, like, and if you're trying to get your foot in the door anywhere, to go out and to meet people and to talk to people and to sell yourself and let them know what you're doing. That, like, when I came out of school and I wasn't working, right, but I was, I was doing my own thing because I wanted to be able to say I'm doing public relations for the Sickle Cell Association of Ontario. Oh, you are? Really? What do you do? What's your background? And it starts a conversation, right? And so, that's the first thing I would suggest, right? Network, get out there, not just to Black functions, get out there, join associations, join boards.
I like that part.
Yeah, join boards. Meet people outside of your circle, and it will help you tremendously, right?
Yes.
And take you into other spaces.
Yes.
And, the other thing that I would say is that you want to just be open to everything. Like I said, there are things that I've done. I used to be a music writer. I used to be a manager. I managed artists. Like, there were things that I did, right? And I'm like, yeah, I had the skills. And I did it. But I've met people from all walks of life, and I had new experiences. And so, you know what I mean? I learned some other things, right? So, always stay open, right? Because you don't know where it's going to take you. And you pick up things along the way and retain them. And when you need them, they come out.
Yes. I agree with you. And on attending events that doesn't even relate to you, sometimes it might just be for networking. Right? And you never know who you're going to meet. I attended an event the other day. It was an online summit by a Black-owned business. And it was a summit that took the whole day. It was from morning to 6 p.m. They had different sessions. And it was just one of the sessions that actually spoke to me. And I said, the universe wanted me to attend this event because of this lady. And, when she started talking, it was as though someone was telling my story in front of me. And she said, I have walked through this path. I know how it works, and this is where I am today. It is not going to be easy, but you got to keep pushing. And then she goes into the chat room and says, if you're a Black woman here, you attended this program, and it's not convenient, but you're still here, say hi. And the chat went off. And I said to myself, exactly. She said she wanted to know how many people took their time, because it's a weekend. If you've got an excuse on Monday or Tuesday because you're working other jobs, weekend for a program that would benefit you. And I met a lot of people online summit, through the chat. And so I'm just trying to echo your thoughts. What you said, it's very, very important for us to network and meet people. So that brings me to my next question. In your journey, are there women who inspire you, Black or white, women who you just look at their life and their story and say, oh my God, this person paid their dues, I can do it?
Yes, definitely. Are you going to ask me to name them?
Yes. Even if it's just one. I always like to ask my guests that, and that's because a lot of young people who follow me, who watch my videos on YouTube as well, and I always like them to realize that everybody has somebody they admire on their journey, and it's because that person paved the way. Yes, please go ahead.
I would definitely say Jean Augustine is a woman that I admire. She was the first Black female MP, and she's a client of mine. And it's not until recently that I've really gotten to know her in the last 4 years, I would say. I've known who she is all my life, right? But I know her as a person. And, to hear, she has a documentary out for those who don't know, so make sure you check it out, called Steadfast. But her journey is one definitely that is inspirational. She came to Canada as a domestic worker, right? She came to clean people's house and take care of their kids. And, became an MP, sitting beside the Prime Minister. Seriously.
Yep. No cap. Yep. And
Right?
then you won an award from our organization, the 100 ABC.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of networking, that was the first place that I saw you, by the way.
Okay.
But like some of my friends, 'cause, I think 4 or 5 of my friends in my circle, they won the award. And, I remember when your name popped up on the screen and they read your profile. Right. So when you go to the red carpet and you're talking, I was looking at you. I was right there behind the camera. And I'm just sharing this with you to let you know that sometimes the people who admire us don't approach us. They learn from a distance, through our work. So I was there at the 100 ABC Women Awards. So I saw you and I'm like, okay. So, and speaking of Jean Augustine, you are like the 5th guest who would mention her name. And that means she's doing a lot, and she's done a lot for the community and in Canada. So, that's amazing.
She's 85 and still like doing so much. Like most people at 85 want to just sit home and watch their stories, right? And she's out all the time speaking to young people. She has her girl center. She's left her legacy, right? There's so many different buildings and parks named after her, and she talks the talk. She's out there doing the community work still at her age, right? So it's very admirable. And then it she can do it. I have no excuse. Like,
Yeah.
No excuse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it definitely but there's a lot of women that I admire my mother, right? And she's a strong woman who is very influential in my life. And she left my parents are Guyanese, and she left Guyana at like 18 and moved to England to do her nursing. Just my aunt was there. She didn't know anybody, and carved out a life. Met my father. They came to Canada and built a life for myself and my brother, and he is very successful in his own right as well. And so that is was not an easy thing to do in the 70s and 80s. There's a lot of things that people aren't aware of. They forget was happening here. There's a lot of racism, and a lot of people didn't like that we were immigrating, coming to Toronto, right? So I admire my mom. And so, but I always have had, like, my family is like majority women. I have 5 aunts, right? 4 aunts. My mother's 5 sisters. And so I've had women around me all the time to look up to. And, I always had that sort of sisterhood support within me. And, even now my 3 employees are 3 Black women. So I wrote a blog about them today, by the way. So go on my website.
Okay, I'll check that
and check out my blog. And it's about acknowledging these young women and the things that they're doing, because I think everybody always does look at older people, but the young people, there are a lot of young people that are doing a lot of great things as well that we should acknowledge as well.
I agree with you totally. I've been looking at the young girls there. I met 2 amazing women at the Black Diamond Ball over the weekend. They're sisters Justice, I believe. Yeah, and I was so inspired, and that's the power of networking. I just said, okay, are you on Instagram? Like, that's my thing now. Sometimes I tell people my own thing with networking now is I'm gonna take a picture with you. When I take the picture with you, I send it to you in your DM. So by the time when I message you, you remember. Yes. Because when you come out to an event, you meet so many people, you're taking photos, you might not remember. So I save you all that stress. I'll take the photo with you and I send it to your DM.
Definitely, yeah. And make sure they remember you.
Yeah, so I was inspired by, by their story and, the work they're doing in the community. And I told them, I said, I'm really, really inspired because it's exactly what I do through the Women of Ruby's platform. Just to sort of like, shed light on the work women like that do, but just to see 2 young women pushing hard and advocating, I was inspired. I mean, all the way home, I was checking their profile, the work they've done, And of course, to echo what you said, sometimes you got to learn from the younger people,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not looking up sometimes. Sometimes you got to look behind to
Exactly.
see, okay, what's happening? What's the new trend, right? Fill me in. So I definitely would check out your blog page. So as I was talking to you and then you were sharing your experience, I remember something that I watched,
Mm-hmm.
Shonda Rhimes,
Mm-hmm.
a video where she had received an award, and she talked about motherhood and
Mm-hmm.
parenting and the sacrifices she had to make.
Mm-hmm.
And that for every time she achieves a milestone in her career, something suffers at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, as a woman who has paid her dues in the media, did you have those moments where you had to choose between a job and parenting, or you were just in between, like, okay, how do I swing this? Did you have those moments, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I was a single mother, so I have two children, or two adult children now, and but for example, when I was working at Canada, when I was working the morning shift, it's a morning show, so I missed all those mornings with my kids, like getting them up. I had someone here who would get them up and get them to school, and I would try and call them right in between, breaking news. But I missed all of that, right? Like, those mornings with them, and so but that was a better shift for me, for our family overall, because I finished work at 11. So then I would bring them a hot lunch, and then they came home from school and I was home, and I could take them to their activities and I could help them with their homework, and we generally went to bed at the same time. So I had that evening with them, that sort of, okay, I had to look at it in my head. It was like, well, a morning is like, you're just rushing to go out, get ready and go to school. So it's not, that big a deal. I mean, it is still a big deal, but it's not that big a deal versus I get the whole evening with them, right? So it was a trade-off. And really, when I was working, I had a shift when I was working 8 to 5, right? And so, which was like a regular shift like everybody else in the world. But then you're rushing because they were in aftercare. So I'm like rushing from downtown trying to get there before they charged me, and it was just very stressful, right? And then and then by the time you're home, you're exhausted and cooking and dinner and home. So I didn't really like that normal shift, to be quite honest, because and we were rushing in the morning. I had to take them to before care and all that kind of stuff like that. So it wasn't actually, I think the other way was better for us. You know, I because of those shifts and the early morning shifts, I was able to attend a lot of things, basketball games and stuff that other parents couldn't attend that my kids were doing and stuff. And I had the weekends off because I worked Monday to Friday. So and generally I had holidays off when I was doing the morning show. So I worked out. But prior to that, when I was working in news, there was times when I had to work Christmas and I had to work, New Year's and that sort of thing. So it is, there are things that there's no, what did they say? There's no really such thing as balance, right? There are things that you have to sort of let go of, but I think it's really about the time, the quality of time that you have, what you're doing in that time. I don't think you should focus on the stuff that you can't do, but the things that you can do and when you're in those moments. So, I did get to attend a lot of things that my children were doing that other parents couldn't and participate and volunteer with. So I look at those positives.
Good. I like that. It's the last part for me.
Yeah.
Looking at the positives, because I remember Shonda, I think we have the video on our Women of Ruby's page. She ended us with saying a mistake or something like that. She felt like she had failed, rather,
Mm-hmm.
but when she looks back now at those moments she missed, she used that was the line she used. And a couple of people in the comments were like, no, you didn't fail.
Yeah.
Like, look at the positive side. And that made me realize that even power women who are house, they don't talk about these things enough sometimes. And such conversations, we need to let people see the reality of the balance, you said.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to strike that balance, but then you just have to do what you've got to do. So thank you so much for sharing your own experience and how you were able to swing it. So this brings me to, the other question. Oh, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I also think that we have to stop being so hard on ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, I think that people watch whatever TV or movie or whatever and think that life is supposed to be this perfect picture thing and everybody's, getting everything they want in every way, right? And not even just, parents, but children too, right? Their expectations, right?
Yeah.
And so, I, even now, right? Like I am very, some people would say I'm a workaholic. And I'm very into, because I don't have the responsibilities anymore of my children. They're grown, but they still need me, right? And I still feel at times, not just with my kids, but just my family in general, that they feel like I'm always busy or I don't have enough time for them or whatnot. But, I tell them, like, you're always on my mind, right? I'm always thinking, and maybe at the moment, I'm not getting to what you want me to get to, but I will get to it,
Yeah.
right? I will get to whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
It hasn't, like, I don't forget. It's just that maybe right that second, I cannot get to whatever it is you want, right? And so you have to give yourself grace,
Yes.
right? And you cannot be everything to everybody,
Mhm.
right? And do the best that you can.
Amazing. That's powerful. I needed that. Thank you.
Mm.
And, speaking of grace, that's something that, I learned, I think about 3 years ago. It was during COVID. And I started just affirming it to myself when I'm not able to get something. I'm like, listen, I'm giving myself grace.
Yeah.
I'm going to wake up the next day and do my best. But for now, I am giving myself grace. What works, works. What doesn't work, I'm going to leave it that way. So thank you for, sharing that. It's very, very important for us to be kind to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And kind to other people. So thank you for sharing that. And this power question, I love to ask people a lot. Your proudest career moments in all of these 20 years. One proud moment that you look back on. I know there are many of them, but just one of it that every morning you wake up, you're like, damn, I did that. I actually did that.
I would have to say, it's not something I did. It was like my first sort of, well, it wasn't really my first, but like recognition for what I was doing, which was last year in September, and I received Business Women of the Year from the Women Empowerment Awards.
Mhm.
And it gave me sort of a validation of what I was doing
Mhm.
for at that time, last 4 years, right? Wow, I'm actually making an impact in what I was doing, and that I guess I'm doing it right
Mhm.
because other people are noticing. And I think also because, and I'm not, this is not to take away from, like, for example, 100 ABC or any other, like, Black awards or anything like that, but this was an award that came from outside of the community. And so it was like, these people don't even know me, right? So they're looking really at my body of work, and it's not, there's no, like, a lot of people know me in the community, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm a stranger to them, and they looked at what I was doing, and I thought that it was worthy of an award. And so that really touched me for a while, for a long while. I was pinching myself for a long while after that, because I was like, wow, okay, I'm doing this thing, man. I really am doing it.
Mm. That's amazing. And I mean, I love the fact that you said, from outside the community,
Mhm.
and the way you value that, of course, not downplaying other awards, because
Oh,
sometimes
and sorry, I just want to, because some of the things get twisted. I like actually value more anything that comes from my community, because I love my community, right? So I'm not saying that anything from my community is less than, right? I'm just making a distinction
absolutely,
that
absolutely,
these people don't know me, and yet they recognize what I was doing.
exactly, exactly. So
Mhm.
I hear you. I understand where you're coming from,
Mhm.
and just the fact that stood up for you, because it's your proud moment. It is you. So I don't think anybody, I think the grace you talked about, anyone who would watch this later would give
Mm-hmm.
that grace to understand that it's just you valuing the fact that these people don't even know you.
Mm-hmm.
But then, they brought you on board to say you are deserving of this award. And, and that meant a lot
Yeah.
to you. So yes, thank you so much, for sharing that. Yes, just before we leave, it's International Women's Day in
Yes.
Field Day. And the theme for this year is Embrace Equity. What
Mm-hmm.
are your thoughts? How are you using FKB Media, right, to reflect that theme? Encourage women and men alike to embrace equity.
These things kind of always make me laugh because I really feel that's not for me. I'm already doing that. I love when people say, "What's your diversity and inclusivity? What's you call it? What do you call it? Plan or whatever
Yes,
for your company?" And it's like,
yes.
we are diversity and inclusivity. That's what we are, right? So I mean, embracing equity. I already do that. I already do that in everything that I do, and we give a platform to, and we have given a platform to so many diverse communities. I've had clients from the South Asian community. I've had white women. I've had Black women, Black men. We've given them a platform. We've helped them get their message out in the media. We've helped them package themselves. We've gotten them coverage for different issues that are specific to their community, showcase things that they're doing, to uplift their community. And so I have been embracing equity since I started this company. It's like, that's just part of who we are. It's our DNA. That's who we are. So, I mean, it's nice. I like the sentiment, but we've already been doing that.
Amazing. And this is out of the questions that I sent to
Mhm.
So would you be willing to take a new mentee?
um, it depends. Right now, I have a overloaded plate, and I have a couple of people that I'm already mentoring. So it just depends on the time, the time commitment in terms of taking on any new mentees. I started another company, FKE Productions Incorporated, and so I'm doing a documentary. So that is taking up a lot of my time as well now. So it's not that I'm a very big supporter of mentorship, and I mentored a gazillion people. So it's just about timing and what the time commitment is for that. So I'm not saying no, but I'm saying
Okay.
that it just would depend. Yeah.
Okay. Because someone sent that to me before I came live to you. Someone who admire you a lot in the community, and she's been here before me, and she was just all over the place, like, oh my God, I know her. She saw you on my WhatsApp status. I was like, oh my God, I've seen her before. I read about her in the news. So I said, you are not the only person on the table. Right. So I'm going to ask Miss Fenella, because this is going to be on YouTube. So I'm going to ask her, if she, of course, take mentees or mentor young women, but of course, it's all at your own convenience. So thank you so much. And, I really appreciate everything you've shared today. I learned so much from you. When I told people it was going to be a masterclass, I'm sure they didn't understand what I meant by that. Because, of course, 20 years of experience, you can't even share it in 30 minutes or 1 hour. But, I mean, you've shared so much today that I'm really grateful to you. And I want to thank you for the amazing work you're doing in the community. I hope that, I would be able to collaborate with you in the future, learn from you as well and your wealth of knowledge, to build my own brand, as I journey along. And my own mentee is here. She's been the one in the comment section. She was really excited to be doing all the commentary. So thank you so much, Miss Fenella. I truly, truly appreciate you. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
being so graceful.
It's funny when you talk about a masterclass. See, I told you there's so many things I forget. There was a point actually too when I was teaching at Centennial College. I was teaching a media literacy course, and I was still working. I would go to work at City, and then I would leave and I go and teach. And then I go to work at Canada, I go and teach. So teaching is in my blood, even though I said, in high school I was thinking about being a teacher, but I ended up been an instructor there for about 5 years, teaching media literacy. So yes, I guess it's every class is a master class of me in a sense.
Yeah,
Every time.
I am going to watch this over again when I put it on my YouTube channel,
Oh, thank you
just so
so
I can take
thank
on.
you for, yeah, thank you for thinking of me and inviting me to do this. It's been good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you. This is going to be up on my YouTube channel. You might want to follow Esther Ijewere for to watch it. Believe me, this is something that is going to be on my YouTube for as long as that channel exists. Go there, watch it. When you need inspiration, it's not just about people in the media, just you needing inspiration from a woman who has done that, did it, and she continues to, pour into the community and do the job right. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, watch, follow her as well. Follow Fenella Bruce. You can see a ID up there. Ask questions. If you have questions, you want to know more about the media industry in Canada, she's your go-to person.
Yeah.
She's good at what she does.
Go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. So you'll get a newsletter every month, and there's great stuff in there as well, and discounts and stuff. I have one quick thing. I have a client right now. They're doing a TO Live, and they have a play that's happening next week called Broken Chord at the St. Lawrence Market. If you put in FKB20 when you purchase your tickets, you'll get 20% off. So I'm inviting everybody to use that code and buy a ticket and come out to the play. It's about a South African choir. It's a story about a South African choir, that was traveling in the 1800s, which was unheard of, and what they went through. So make sure you check it out.
Oh, I'm going to
use
check that out. Right.
Yeah, so that went out today in my newsletter, so everybody's going to get like a discount. So sign up for it and you'll get other discounts for other things as well, tickets.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. So just before we go, final words, just something, a byline from you before we go.
Final words. I would say, one of the things that I like to tell people, well, two things. My two words that I leave with people. My word for 2023, because I was asked this earlier this year by Toronto Metropolitan University for their alumni newsletter. My word for this year is patience. And patience in everything that you do, whether it's your family, whether it's your work, whether it's with yourself, right? Patience is as I say, patience is a virtue. Patience is something that you need to practice, because as long as you're patient, it will come. Whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you're dealing with, whoever you're dealing with, just be patient, and you'll see practicing that will make your life so much more easier. And then the second P is persistence. I have to practice that in what I do. So even though you may get 5 or 6 no's, even when I was doing talks after I started working in the industry, I would bring all of the rejection letters that I got from people when I sent out my tape, right? That said, no, we're not interested, whatever. I could have just went and got a job, and a government job, and called it a day. But I continued because I believed in myself and that this was what I wanted to do. So you have to be persistent, right? And so if somebody says no, then you go to somebody else, and you go to somebody else until you get that yes, right? And so I always encourage people, be persistent. If you believe in yourself or whatever it is, or your message, be persistent with it. Stay the course, and everything will work out. And be patient.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Patience and persistence. I think I'm going to use that for the new moon energy as well.
Yes.
That's going to be my affirmation for the new moon energy, just to, just affirm it to myself more. I mean, patience is something that you would always get your foot in the door with patience. Right. Somehow you would, you swing things and you look at yourself like, oh, how did I do that? So I totally echo your thoughts, and thank you so much for sharing such powerful words. Thank you, Ms. Fenella. It's been an amazing time with you.
Thank you.